Okay, this is the day 8 homework lesson, and we're going to take it up to the next level. We're going to be grouping, and we're going to start dealing with degree 4 polynomials, which we really haven't done before. Pay attention to the directions. Some of them we're supposed to do without using a calculator, and some of them we will use a calculator. So please do what it says. Do not watch this video with a pencil in your hand. Just watch it and then do the problem yourself later. Okay, looking at number 1, we're supposed to do this without using a calculator. Anytime you see that there are 4 terms, you should be thinking about grouping. So thinking about grouping, we could group the first 2 terms and the second 2 terms. The greatest common factor of the first 2 terms is x squared. So I would have to bring that x squared out like that. Alright, now that is going to leave behind x minus 2. Now the GCF of the second 2 terms, I see 25 goes into both of these. So that'll be plus 25. And that's going to leave behind, again, x minus 2. So these parentheses, the x minus 2 is a common factor. So I'm going to bring that x minus 2 out front. Notice that it's not squared. Now that's going to leave behind x squared plus 25. Now if this were minus, I could factor this more. But since it's plus, it's unfactorable. So just copying this over again, so far I have a factor of x minus 2, and I have a factor of x squared plus 25. Now that is the factored form of this polynomial. For the roots, the pink one here is going to give me a root of positive 2. You know, obviously what I'm doing is I'm setting that equal to 0 and I'm solving it, so I get x equals 2. Now this blue one, if I set that equal to 0, x squared plus 25 is equal to 0, I could subtract 25 from both sides. So far that gives me x squared equals negative 25. To unsquare this x, I'm going to want to do the square root. Okay, so I could take the square root of both sides. The solution, of course, will be plus or minus. So far that gives me x equals plus or minus. Now the square root of 25 is 5, just plain old 5. Now because I had a negative under the radical, I know that's going to make I. So I have plus or minus 5i. So I will write that up here as 5i and negative 5i. There's my plus or minus 5i. By the way, we knew how many roots there would be right from the beginning because of the degree. If the degree is 3, there will be 3 zeros. Alright, or roots, which is the same thing. So we found all 3, so that's it, we're done. Okay, notice we did not use a calculator at all during that process. Now, number 2, we're going to use a calculator this time to find 1 0. And then we'll factor and find the rest, okay? But we're going to use a calculator this time. Now, when we're using a calculator, what we're talking about is using the table feature. So we need to type in this equation. I think I'll just do it from scratch. So I have x to the 3rd power, all right, minus 12 x squared plus 43 x minus 42. So you type it in, hit enter. I recommend starting from negative 10 and scrolling down because it usually doesn't go past negative 10. Okay, so here I am at negative 10. I'm looking for a 0 on the y side. So scrolling down, looking for a 0. Not that 0, not the 0 on the x side. We're looking only on the y side. There was a 0 in between here, by the way. See how it went from negative 10 to 4? But it must have been a decimal. So we'll keep looking. There was another one. There was one between 2 and negative 2, by the way. Anyway, the first integer we find is here 6. 6 is 1, okay? So that's what we needed. So we have ourselves a root of 6, which will immediately translate into a factor of x minus 6. So we'll take our root of 6 and we will do synthetic division. Alright, so coefficients 1, negative 12, 43, negative 42. Okay, so 1 times 6, 6, negative 6 times 6, negative 36. That's going to be 7 times 6 is 42. That's 0. Better be 0. If it's a 0, it better be 0. Okay, fine. Now we look at this. And once we get down to a trinomial, we definitely are going to put our variables back in. So x squared minus 6x plus 7. We should try to factor this. Let's see if it factors. All right, x squared would be x times x. 7 would be 7 times 1. So this is looking promising. So I'm trying to get a negative 6x middle. So inner, I have 7x. Outer, I have 1x. If I'm going to get a negative 6 middle, I need a negative 7 and a positive 1. Okay, that would be a negative 7 and a positive 1. Can you tell me why this is a fail? Why this doesn't work, even though it gives me negative 6? Because it doesn't give me positive 7. Alright, negative 7 times positive 1 is negative 7. So that was really close. I can get the negative 6, but it's still wrong because I cannot get the positive 7 at the same time. So that means this is unfactorable because that was 7 times 1. That was the only way to do it. So this is unfactorable. So you're either going to want to complete the square or do the quadratic formula. Alright, I think I'm going to go ahead and just do the quadratic formula this time. Quadratic formula, just in case you forgot what it is maybe I'll just write it right here. The solutions will be opposite of b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and you have to memorize that. Okay, so in this case that means I have x is equal to, alright, opposite of b, so there's b, so that'll be positive 6 plus or minus square root, come back to that, over 2a. Well, a is 1, so 2a is just 2. So now it's just the b squared minus 4ac part. Let's just put this in the calculator. Okay, b is negative 6, so b squared is 36. Please do the b squared in your head. If you type in negative 6 squared in your calculator, it's going to give you negative 36, and that would be wrong. So just, when you square something is positive, so just square it in your head, put positive 36. So b squared minus 4, alright, a is 1, which we don't need to write, and then c is 7. So there's b squared minus 4ac. Okay, so that gives me 8, positive 8. Okay, now the only thing you should be putting in your calculator is the square root of 8. Alright, and that is 2 radical 2. So what I have now is x equals 6 plus or minus 2 radical 2 over 2. Time to reduce. Alright, I like to put a heart around these to remind me to reduce these if possible. It's all or nothing. If all three of these are divisible by something, we must do it. So let's divide all three of these by 2. If I do that, then I'm going to get x equals 3 plus or minus radical 2. Okay, because 2 divided by 2 is 1, and that's it. So there we go. Now I'm going to split this up. 3 plus or minus radical 2 becomes 3 plus radical 2 and 3 minus radical 2. So these are our 3 zeros. Okay? Oh wait, factored form. Almost forgot. Oh yeah, as soon as we saw that that this did not factor any further, then this is going to come over here and become the other factor. So we'll have x squared minus 6x plus 7. Okay, because right at this moment, when we put the variables back in, we got this trinomial, and you know, we could have brought this down, x minus 6. We had factored it right then. It's just a matter of could we factor any further. And since we can't, then that's the answer. So that's factored form, and here are the 3 zeros that we knew we would find. All right, let's go on to number 3. All right, if you haven't done number 3 and you just watched the video for number 2, you should be able to do number 3 yourself. So stop the video now and go do number 3 by yourself, and then check your answer. All right, do not watch this video with a pencil in your hand. So once again, it says use a calculator to find 1 0. So we're just going to type this in our handy dandy calculator. So we will hit our table button, and I'm just going to type it in from scratch. So I've got x to the third power minus x squared minus 28x plus 40. Okay, double checking. All right. I always like to start at -10. I suggest you do the same. And just scroll down looking for 0 here. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. Bam! There it is. I have a 0 here at 5. Alright. So I'll record that 0 or root, which means I will have a factor of x minus 5, by the way. So let's go ahead and do our synthetic division with the 5. So here we go. 1, -1, -28, and 40. Okay, so let's see what we got. So bring down the 1. Okay, 1 times 5 is 5, minus 1 is 4, times 5 is 20. That gives me -8 times 5 is -40, which of course better make 0. Okay, so let's see if we can factor this. So putting the variables back in, that would be x squared plus 4x minus 8. And of course I could go ahead and bring this down because I've got x minus 5 from that. So I've factored so far. If this doesn't factor any further, then I will write that down. But let's try. Let's see. X squared, that would be x and x. 8 is either 8 and 1, that's not going to work, or 2 and 4. Well, that's not going to work either. Alright, you know, like 2x and 4x, there's no way to get 4 out of that. So this is unfactorable. So which means I will go ahead and write down x squared plus 4x minus 8 right now. But we still need the roots that come from this. So to find them, we will have to do the quadratic formula. Okay, we did that before. So look, there's your quadratic formula right there. And this time I'm just going to do it. So, right, my roots should equal opposite of b. So b is 4, so that means negative 4 plus or minus square root of something, all over 2a. Well, a is 1, so 2a will just be 2. Now under here I'm supposed to have b squared minus 4ac. I like to do that on my calculator. Okay, so b squared, so b is 4, so b squared is 16. Do that part in your head. Minus 4, a is 1, so we don't need to put that, but c is negative 8. So there's my b squared minus 4ac. Alright, and I get positive 48. Alright, so that is what I have so far. Now I will go on to do the square root of 48. Alright, so I'm going to have negative 4 plus or minus something over 2. But square root of 48 is 4 radical 3. Okay, then we have to look and see if we can reduce this. So I like to put a heart around these like so. Okay, if all three of these are divisible by something, we must do that. It has to be all or nothing though. But all of these are divisible by 2, so let's do it. Alright, so that is going to give us negative 2 plus or minus 2 radical 3. Alright, and that's it. So I will write my zeros this way. Negative 2 plus 2 radical 3 and negative 2 minus 2 radical 3. So those are my 3 roots, or zeros. Okay, I get to use a calculator again on this one. We're going to find 1, 0, and then factor and find the rest. Alright, once again we're going to use a calculator. So here we go. Table feature. Just going to do it from scratch. So we have x to the 4th power plus x to the 3rd power minus 29 x squared plus x minus 30. Alright, let's start from negative 10. I think is a good place to start. And let's start scrolling down and see what, whoa, look at that, right there. We have a 0 at negative 6. Let's use it. So there's a 0 at negative 6. Which means we have a factor of x plus 6. Okay, so let us put this in our synthetic division box. Okay, so the coefficients are 1, 1, negative 29, 1, negative 30. Okay, let's work it out. Alright, bring down that 1, so 1 times negative 6 is there, and that makes negative 5 times negative 6 is positive 30, which makes positive 1 times negative 6 is negative 6, which makes negative 5 times negative 6 is positive 30, which of course makes 0. Now, we were only supposed to find 1, 0 in the calculator. The rest we have to do by hand. Okay, it says 1, 0. So let's see what we can do with this mess. Let's put the variables back in. So what we have here is, this would be x to the third power minus 5x squared plus x minus 5. Okay. So anytime we have 4 terms, the first thing that you should think about is grouping, just like we did on problem number 1. Okay, when we had 4 terms to begin with and we did grouping. So even though we found the one root on the calculator, still once we get down to 4 terms, always look and ask yourself if grouping will work. Okay, so let's take a look. Okay, now I think it will be helpful. Well, okay, first of all, the common factor between these two terms is x squared. Alright, so that'll be x squared out in front. Alright, so that's going to leave behind x minus 5. Alright, now for grouping to work, I really hope this next parentheses is also x minus 5. I already kind of see the x minus 5 here, but just to make it really clear, I think it will be helpful if you put a 1 right here. Go ahead and make this a 1x. And imagine that you are taking out a GCF of 1, which I know is silly, but it helps you see that it's okay to put in this parentheses, because you're not really changing anything. Okay, 1 times x would be x, and 1 times negative 5 still negative 5. So by putting it in parentheses, putting a 1 in front, it helps us do our grouping, but we didn't really change the value of the problem. Okay, so now I can take out this common factor of x minus 5 like this. Alright, pull those x minus 5s out front, factor them out, and that's going to leave behind x squared plus 1. Don't forget the 1. Alright, a lot of kids don't know what to do. If you don't put that 1 there, they just don't know what to do when they take this x minus 5 away. Alright, it's a 1. Okay, so if this were a minus 1, I could factor even more by doing x plus 1, x minus 1. But as it is, this is unfactorable. So I could just go ahead and write this down. So you have this x minus 5. So I'm just going to write that here, x minus 5. And then we've got x squared plus 1. Alright, of course the x minus 5 will give me an additional root of positive 5. Now, look at the degree. The degree is 4, so I'm really expecting there to be 4 roots. So I've got 2 so far, so the remaining 2 must come from this x squared plus 1. So you can probably guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to take x squared plus 1, set it equal to 0, and solve. It doesn't factor. So minus 1 minus 1, that'll give me x squared equals negative 1. Then you take the square root of both sides. Okay, don't forget your plus or minus. So that's going to give you x equals plus or minus, and this is just going to be I. Okay, look, the square root of negative 1, that's what I is. That's the definition of I. So if you see the square root of negative 1, just simply put I. And we have plus or minus, so I will put I and negative I. So there are my 4 zeros, my 4 roots. Okay. Number 5. We're still using a calculator, but this one says we're going to use a calculator to find 2 zeros right off the bat instead of just 1. So that's going to change how we do things just a little bit. Alright, but let's get to it. Table feature. Okay, so 2x to the 4th power plus 25x to the 3rd power plus 99x squared plus 104. These are kind of big numbers. X minus 80. That's alright. We have our calculator. I like to start at -10. I think I've mentioned that before. And let's scroll down and see what we see. Okay. We're supposed to find 2 zeros. So far I found 1. -5 is a 0. Alright, because I see 0 on the y side, so -5. And that will immediately give me a factor of x plus 5, which I'll write at the same time. Now I'm supposed to find 2 zeros, so this time I keep going. Oh, there's 2 right in a row, 0, 0. So -4 is another one. Okay, so there's another 0 of -4, which means x plus 4 is another factor. So we found 2 zeros, and the degree is 4, so there should be 2 more to come. So let's do our synthetic and find those other 2 zeros, see what's up. Start with -5. I just like to go in order. Okay, so here we go. So -5 in the box. So coefficients are 2, 25, 99, 104, and -80. Brilliant, my friends. Oh, I wanted to use pink. Okay, so bring that down. So I'm going to have 2. Alright, times -5 is -10. Add those up. I think I'm getting 15. Yeah. 15 times 5. You know what? I'm not going to lie. I'm a little rusty on that one. -75. Alright, so this should be, what, 24. Okay, so times -5 is -120. Alright, if you add these up, you're going to get -16. And guess what? -16 times -5 is 80, which makes 0. Okay, so far so good. Now, if we were only finding 1 0 off the calculator, we'd go ahead and put our variables back in, and we try to do grouping, because there'd be 4 terms. But just letting you know, the thing is, grouping wouldn't have worked this time. Okay, between 2 and 15, there is no GCF. So and this is not going to make a 2 and a 15 or anything. So grouping wouldn't work. So we really needed another 0 to do this problem. And here's how you do it. You just take your next 0, you put it in a box, and you pick up right from here, from this level. So my next 0 is -4. So I'll put a -4 in the box right here with these sums. And I will just skip another line, and I'll put another box, and I just keep going. Alright? Now I could do this for as many zeros as I had. So, you just do it. I feel like I should change colors once again. Let's go purple this time. Okay, so that'll be 2. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. Okay, so that's going to be 7. 7 times negative 4 is negative 28. So that is negative 4. Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16, which once again makes 0. Okay, so we already had both of these zeros recorded and their factors. So I just need to worry about this trinomial. Once you get down to a trinomial, you can always put your variables back in, because it'll either factor or you will use the quadratic formula. So this is plus 7x minus 4. Now I'm always going to try factoring first. Alright, 2x squared, well that's 2x and x, that's the only way. Now 4 is either going to be 2 times 2, or it's going to be 4 times 1. But 2 times 2 is not going to work, because that's going to give me a 2 here, and that would make a common factor. And if there was not a common factor in the original trinomial, there shouldn't be a common factor in the parentheses either. So that means 4 and 1 is my only hope. And of course the 4 cannot go here for the same reason, GCF. So it would have to be 1 and 4. I'll come to that pretty quickly. Now inner, I have 1x. Outer, I have 8x. I'm trying to get 7, so this is looking good. To get a positive 7, I need a negative 1 and a positive 8. So here's my negative 1, and this would give me a positive 8, because that's outer. And a negative times a positive is a negative, so this is now factored correctly. Okay, so 2x minus 1, x plus 4. Okay, so here I go 2x minus 1 and x plus 4. Now, do you notice that I have, I already had an x plus 4. So I have 2 of them. So, if I were to make these zeros, then this factor is going to give me a 0 of 1/2. Alright, and just one more time, understand that I'm getting that by setting this equal to 0 and solving, right? So that's like 2x equal to 1, divide by 2, x equals 1/2. Alright, but this one would give me a 0 of negative 4 again. But you really don't want to write it twice. That's redundant, like you're repeating yourself. It's already been listed, so you don't want to list it again. So instead of doing that, this is what I would like you to do. First of all, you could, as far as the factors, you could leave it like this if you want to. Or you could go ahead and write it this way, squared. Alright, because there were 2 of them, you could just put x plus 4 squared. This is the preferred way of doing it. So we will not write this this extra negative 4, but instead what we'll do is we'll just put a little note to ourselves, a little arrow, and write the word double. Okay, and it's obvious if you write the factors this way, x plus 4 squared, this is a double root. So when we're looking to make sure that we found all of the roots, you know that we wanted 4 roots, right? If we didn't say double, it would look like we only had 3 roots. But really it's 4 because this one is used twice, because x plus 4 is used twice. And it counts, all right? Even though it's the same number, it counts in terms of counting up to 4. So we have these 2 roots, and then we have this one counting twice. That makes a total of 4, so that still is what we mean when we say there are 4 roots. Okay, that's how you do number 5. Let's move on. So hopefully the next time you see a double root, you'll do it just like I did. Okay, number 6. Alright, this one should be really similar to the last one. Again, we're supposed to use the calculator to find 2 zeros. If you just watched the video for number 5, stop the video and try to do number 6 yourself. Alright, you saw me do number 5. You should be able to do this one on your own. So if I were you, I'd pause the video and give it a shot. Either way, you should never watch these videos with a pencil in your hand or a pen. Once you learn how to do it yourself. Okay. I'm just going to type this in. So we have 6x to the 4th power plus 5x to the 3rd power minus 127x squared minus 249x plus 45. Okay, I'm going to start at -10 like I always do. And I'm going to start scrolling down. Okay, the first zero I get to is -3. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. So I have a 0 of -3, which means I have a factor of x plus 3. Alright, but I'm supposed to find 2, so I keep going. That is not 1. That's just the y-intercept. Keep going. Oh, look, there's another one at 5. Okay, so I have another 0 or root at 5, which means x minus 5 is a factor. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to use these in order. So let's start with -3. Okay, so coefficients 6, 5, -127, -249, and 45. Okay, so that's 6 multiply, that's -18. Add them up, that's what, -13. Multiply those, that's 39. Alright, so that's going to be -88. -88 times -3 is positive 264. Okay. If I add these up, I'm going to get 15. And 15 times -3 is -45. Which of course makes 0. So I've got this so far. Okay, so we used our 0 of -3. Now let's do the 5. And we will pick right up where we left off. Alright, again, normally when we get down to 4 terms, we would try grouping. Now, I gave you the hint that you're supposed to find 2 zeros. But without that hint, you would look at the 4, but you would quickly see, if you start looking for common factors, it's not going to give you the same thing twice. So grouping wouldn't have worked. Grouping would have failed. Which is why we need to move on, and we need another 0 from the calculator. Okay, so alright, so the 6 comes down. 6 times 5 is 30. Okay, that's what, 17 times 5 is 85. Add them up, I get -3 times 5 is -15, which again makes 0. Now, once you get down to 3 numbers, you definitely want to go ahead and put the variables back in there. So this will be 6x squared plus 17x minus 3. Now either this will be factorable or we can use the quadratic formula. I'm going to try factoring. Okay. Normally I would try 3x and 2x first. I'm looking at the 6. Could be 3 times 2. Now 3 can only be 3 times 1. But I know not to put the 3 here. So I'll try 1 and 3. Now inner, that gives me 2x. Outer, I have 9x. That gives me a maximum of 11. So that is not working for me. So I need to do something else. Alright, so instead of doing 2 times 3, I will just try doing 6x times x. Alright, let's try not splitting up the 6. Now the 3, again, is just 3 times 1, but I'm not going to put the 3 here with the 6. That's going to make a GCF, which shouldn't happen. So I will go straight to the 1 times 3 option. Now inner, I have 1x. Outer, I have 18. Alright, I'm trying to get a middle of positive 17, so this is looking good. If I have a positive 18 and a negative 1, that would make 17. Here's my negative 1, and positive here will give me positive 18 outer. And a negative times a positive is a negative, so this is the correct factorization. So I will go ahead and include that here. So 6x minus 1 and x plus 3. Okay, so this is going to give me a 0 of 1/6. And of course this will give me negative 3. So that's it. These are my 4 roots, and this is the factored form. Alright, just in case anybody still needs it, I got the 1/6 by taking 6x minus 1, setting it equal to 0. Adding 1 to both sides, 6x equals 1, then I divide it by 6. X equals 1/6. That's where that came from. Okay, that's it for number 6. Alright, now last 2. Notice these say factor without using a calculator. This is something called quadratic form. When you have a 4th power and then there is no 3rd power, and then you have squared, and then there is no x term. So when you have a trinomial and it's made up of all even powers in a row, this is quadratic form. And the good thing about it that makes it easy is we can factor this like a normal quadratic trinomial, even though it's quartic. We will use the same principles. So x to the 4th power can be factored as x squared times x squared. So then you look at 18 and you're thinking, that's either 2 times 9 or 3 times 6 or even 1 times 18. But looking at the fact that the middle is positive 7, we're thinking it's probably going to be 2 times 9. Okay, so inner we have 2x squared. Outer we have 9x squared. We're trying to get a middle of 7x squared. So we need a negative 2 and a positive 9 to make positive 7. So there's my negative 2, there's my positive 9. Neither one of these will factor any further. Alright, if either one of these were the difference of 2 squares, I could keep going. But 2 is not a square, and this one is not the difference, it's the sum. So this cannot be factored any further. So these, this makes the factored form. X squared minus 2 x squared plus 9. Alright, that is the factored form. Now as far as the zeros, I need to take these guys and set them equal to 0 and solve. Alright, I'm going to set that equal to 0, and I'm going to set this equal to 0. So adding 2 to both sides, maybe I should just show it. I'm going to get x squared equals 2. Then I take the square root of both sides. Alright, not forgetting my plus or minus. So that's going to give me x is equal to plus or minus radical 2. Now I'm going to write my answer separately as radical 2 and negative radical 2. And I want you to do the same. And I'll do the same thing here, subtracting 9 from both sides. So I've got x squared equals negative 9. And then take the square root of both sides. Now be careful on this one. 9 is a perfect square. And I've got a negative under the radical. Wait, did I just forget my plus or minus? OMG. Alright. Now the square root of 9 is 3. So that's plus or minus 3. Because there's a negative under the radical, that's going to become I. So this is plus or minus 3i. So I will again write that separately as 3i and negative 3i. So that's it. We had degree 4, so we were looking for 4 zeros, and there they are. Alright, number 8 should work the same way as number 7. Yeah, it's a trinomial. It's in quadratic form. It should be factorable. So let's go for it. X to the 4th power can be factored as x squared times x squared. 28. Well, let's see. The first thing that pops into your head is 4 times 7. Am I right? Now, inner, we have 4x squared. Outer, we have 7x squared. We are trying to get a positive 3 out of this, positive 3x squared. So that means we need a negative 4 and a positive 7 to make positive 3. So there's my negative 4, and there is my positive 7. Now, one of these can be factored further. Am I right? This one, x squared minus 4, this is the difference of 2 squares. So I'm going to take this, okay, and factor it further. So this is going to factor as x plus 2 times x minus 2. Alright, difference of 2 squares pattern. And the x squared plus 7, that does not factor further. So I will just bring that down unchanged. So this is the factored form. Okay, so x plus 2 times x minus 2 times x squared plus 7. That's the factored form. And of course, the zeros, from this, we're going to get negative 2. From this one, we will get positive 2. And this one, I will show it one more time. We are setting x squared plus 7 equal to 0 and solving. So minus 7 on both sides, so that's x squared is equal to negative 7. And then square root. Alright, do not forget your plus or minus. So that's going to give us x equals plus or minus. Now this negative under the radical has to come out as an I. But the 7 is not a perfect square or anything, so it's just going to stay radical 7. So this is best we can do. So I will split this up one more time as a positive and a negative. So I will have I radical 7 and negative I radical 7. So there are the 4, count them, 4 zeros that we were looking for. Alright, and that is it for this lesson. I hope that you were watching this without a pencil in your hand. Shame on you if you were just copying off of me. You won't know that you can do it until you do it yourself. Alright, I'll see you on the next video.